Hi, my name is Luke Sinek. I'm the course leader for A-Level Environmental Science at New College. Thanks for taking your time to check out what we do for A-Level Environmental Science at New College and for taking part in the day overall. So what we're going to just have a look through in this short video is understanding just a quick overview for what the A-Level Environmental Science involves. We're going to focus on just one of the topics, which is the causes and consequences of climate change, which may be a reason why some of you might pick this course as something you're interested in. And actually, I'm going to show you how you can get involved in some real-life citizen science research about the impacts of climate change, focusing on how it impacts on invertebrates. So just a quick overview, first of all, of what the A-level course, environmental science course involves. The first year is split into two topics, the living and the physical environment, and the second year is split into more like four, with the energy, pollution, biological resources like agriculture and sustainability kind of running throughout. And there is also a fairly heavy research methods section across the 2 years, which looks at the ways in which we investigate how humans impact on the environment. In the first year, we look at starting off with the conditions for why life arose on Earth, and then going on to conservation as the main topic that we do in the first term. So why is conservation important? How do we conserve biodiversity? And then applying that to some specific contexts, for example, coral reefs, rainforests, and Antarctica. In the second term, we then go on to looking at more like the physical environment, which includes looking at the structure of the atmosphere and climate change, how water is transferred around the planet, the mineral resources that we get from the earth and how they're connected into different cycles, and also the structure of the soil and how that links to agriculture. Then in the second year, a big focus is on different types of energy resource, for example, fossil fuels and renewable energy, and how do we conserve energy. And then also another really big module on sources of pollution, effects of pollution, and like with lots of the topics in environmental science, mechanisms to control pollution. Finally, looking at different types of agriculture and how we can make sure that agriculture is sustainable, with sustainability again being something that features throughout. So it's a really good course. If these look like topics that you're interested in, there's quite a lot of content to learn for this course, but really interesting topics. And if you enjoy and you think these sound interesting, then you'll enjoy learning about them as we go through the course. So just a very quick focus and an overview on something that's in the second module. So it's like the second half of the first year, where we look at the structure of the atmosphere and the causes and the consequences of climate change. So for example, the atmosphere can be sort of split up into some different sections, really. The troposphere might be something that you immediately associate with the atmosphere, but then just above that being the stratosphere, where some higher planes and things would go, but lots of things are taking place in the troposphere. I'm sure you'll be aware of the greenhouse effect and the enhanced greenhouse effect that is caused by humans. And really, the A-level environmental science course is a continuation of what you've been doing in GCSE biology, GCSE chemistry, a bit of GCSE physics, and also GCSE geography as well, and GCSE maths. All of those come together in environmental science. It's a multidisciplinary subject. So to understand climate change, for example, it involves in part understanding some of the physics for different waves, and also then some of the impacts on the earth in terms of how it affects biodiversity. So that might include some biology. So that you probably would have heard of the natural greenhouse effect. And actually some of this is actually quite good, that we have got a little bit of greenhouse effect. Normally that we have some of the radiation is transmitted through the atmosphere and absorbed by the earth, but then a significant amount is also reflected back into space. However, with the enhanced greenhouse effect, then we've got the situation where we've been making much too much carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere, and this is absorbing a lot more of the infrared radiation, and we're transmitting less into space. And this is responsible for, rising air and sea temperatures, as well as ocean acidification. So we go into having a look at that in a bit more detail, looking at the evidence for this process occurring. One of which is in ice cores, which is a really interesting bit of evidence where they can look at over time the temperature changes over the last 800,000 years, for example, as being shown here, and then they can compare that to carbon dioxide levels, and you can see that there's a very, very close link between the two. So understanding data and how that provides evidence for environmental explanations is a key part of the course. So we also then go on to looking at what are the consequences of this then, because actually climate change can be measured in a number of different areas. It might be changes to organisms, but it also might be changes to oceans, changes to ice, changes in wind and rain patterns as well. So one of the things I'm just going to go through with you now is that the ecological changes due to climate change are things like changes to plant flowering times and insect populations, but also things like bird migratory patterns, all sorts of habitats that are affected by droughts and flooding, but also then changes in where different species are distributed and how hibernation might be affected as well. So if we just look at one example, unfortunately, even though it gets less attention than some of the other species, there's been a large decline in many invertebrates, and they play a central role in a large part of many different food webs. So as you can see, since 1970, all other invertebrates, and also this particular group of invertebrates that includes things like moths and butterflies, unfortunately have all shown quite a significant decline over the last 40 years. And there is actually some really important, relevant reasons for understanding this better, none more so than all the changes that have happened due to coronavirus. There are very strong links to how our impact on the environment does impact disease-causing organisms. For example, climate change can increase the spread of disease-causing insects like mosquitoes and ticks, for example. It disrupts normal ecosystem functioning. It might affect the microbial communities inside living organisms. And also, again, thinking about how we're spreading it around, again, very relevant to coronavirus, that the way that we travel around the earth now is another key for how we're spreading human disease. So there's lots of really strong links to understanding climate change and understanding how it impacts on organisms, but also understanding human health, and making those links is an important part of doing environmental science as well. So you can actually have a go at having a look at a particular version of investigating how climate change impacts on microorganisms and invertebrates by using this really good citizen science website. Now, there's loads of different things that you could pick here, and I'm just going to show you one. You can sign in, and if you sign up, it's really quick to register. Just need your name and an email address, and it logs your progress then, which can be really nice, but you don't have to. So if you don't want to sign up, what you can do is click on projects at the top. And if you just scroll down, so sorry, the name of this website is zooniverse.org. And we're going to look for a project called EmbryoCam. Now, this is a really interesting project where it's looking at how climate change might affect the development of embryos for organisms living in aquatic environments, of which this particular project is looking at how climate change might be impacting on organisms such as snail development, because again, they're relatively easy organisms to study. So this is a project from the University of Plymouth. It's real science research that you could contribute to, where they're looking for people to help contribute to training an artificial intelligence program to be able to recognize embryo development in these snails. So here's a very quick time-lapse video showing that at different temperatures, this really has quite a dramatic impact on the development of the snail embryos. So what they're asking for is that humans are looking through these short video clips and identifying what type of movements the snail embryos are doing, because then they can use that to train an AI program to be able to do this identification for them. So what you can do is, all of the projects have the same sort of layout. There's more information there if you want it. But I'm just going to go back to the main project. And I'm just going to click on this first one here, embryos on the move. Now, what should come up then is a little training program, essentially. And so I'm just going to quickly go through this with you so I can give you as much time as possible for you to have a go at yourself if you would like to. So it gives you these short little video clips and it tells you what different movement that it's looking for. So for example, for this one, it's showing, and the videos will look better when you have a look at this website yourself. Spinning motion is something that you could look out for in the embryo, and that will be telling you that it's doing this particular motion. Sometimes you might see some embryos crawling, again, maybe something like you'd associate with a kind of snail or something like that, I suppose. Again, a very small embryo kind of crawling along the edge of the egg that it's contained in. You might see this sort of movement, where again, depending on the angle that it's looking for, and it's got a little arrow there to show you a tongue-like projection of the snail used to feed, and it's scraping at the egg wall. So you might see that kind of thing as well, so movements of the radula. Or you might see it kind of just generally kind of contracting and flexing all of its muscles. So rather than a specific movement kind of crawling along, you might be able to see the snail doing that as well. And finally, in most of them, you can actually even incredibly see a tiny little embryonic snail heart beating. And so one of the things is that they ask you to try and do a little count for how fast you think the heartbeat is. So you can look at those as many times as you like, and this is just a little training one that it gives you to have a practice. So in this video, you can have a look, and there's a very slow movement, but I can definitely see here that there's a heart beating. So maybe not too much of other movements, but definitely there's a heartbeat there, isn't there? So we count that as moving. Then what it asks you to do is select which behaviors you can see. Well, actually, I could only really see heart beating there, but I wasn't doing the counting. So I'm going to play it again. I'm going to count how many times the heart beats in this 13 seconds. Which was more than 25. And then it just asks you to confirm. And then it can go on to the next one and it will give you another video. And if you can do that as many times as you like, just the same thing, which you get better at each time. And again, this is contributing real data to help this particular team with this particular university project. And as you can see, there's 2,000 other people working on this so far that have made 50,000 classifications. So if you take part in it, you'll be taking part of this genuine research, which is helping them to understand climate change and how this impacts on invertebrates. So I hope that was a useful, brief introduction to environmental science, thinking about what some of the main topics we cover, a little bit to do with one of those specific topics, which is climate change. And if you want to then have a go at doing some real environmental science research yourself, then you can go to zooniverse.org and you can find that project. Okay, thank you very much. And I hope I will see you at New College in the future.